How you doing, guys? I'm Jake from SEScoops, and I'm here with RGT 85 Shawn Long. How are you doing, Shawn?
Doing good, man. Doing good. Thanks for having me on.
Good, good. I said to him before I started recording, this is really surreal because I usually watch your videos while I'm sat here working. So I'm going to try and make sure that I'm engaged the whole time and I don't just stop talking and listening to you. Um, yeah, basically, we're here. We're going to be talking about the art of N64 wrestling games, which is your brand new book that's been released. Obviously, you are a wrestling guy, you are a gamer guy. Important to note that you're not just a Nintendo guy, which a lot of people, a lot of people do make that mistake. So what kind of like spurred on the idea of making this book?
I'm a very just get an idea sort of person, and then I kind of invest myself in it. Like I have a very kind of compulsive and maybe a little bit of an obsessive personality where I get into something and then like I'm really into that for like a while and then sometimes I move on, sometimes not so much. But like with N64, well, I guess taking it a step back, like wrestling games, like I've been playing them, I'm 39. So I had an NES. I had WrestleMania on the NES, which was a terrible game, but like I didn't care at the time because it was cool. You had Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant on there. And it was cool to be able to experience that. And I always grew up playing games, wrestling games, that is. I had a Sega Genesis, so I had like Raw and Royal Rumble. But like with the N64, that was such a hot period of wrestling. And I was around 12 or 13 during that time frame. And I had really gotten back into wrestling like hardcore. And so with those games, like you could almost tell like during that time frame of playing them that like you were playing something special. You were playing something that was like a cut above, what you were able to do on previous systems and stuff like that. So I had so many fond memories of playing, World Tour, Revenge, WrestleMania 2000 and stuff. And really, like, I never stopped playing those games because, fast forward, 8 years later, the modding scene kind of started jumping off with that game too. And I remember I was doing very early days of YouTube. This channel is long gone, but I was doing simulation matches with WWECW, like when it first started, like when it was first cool, and you had all the original ECW guys that were a part of it, Sandman, Sabu, Balls Mahoney, of course, RVD and stuff like that. And I was doing sim matches and I was just doing commentary because I had all these cool texture mods and stuff. And I was like, these games are still so much fun. And then, yeah, I just I've written a book before on an obscure video game console, the Sega 32X, because once again, that was kind of just something I came up with. So I just thought, this would be kind of fun. And, I reached out to some people and, just got their ideas and, as far as design and stuff is concerned. And, it definitely started to take shape. And, I think it came out really, really well.
Yeah, no, no, definitely. So, in terms of that era of gaming, I know obviously you mentioned that you had a NES, you had a SNES, you had an N64. See, for me, I was a Sega kid, and then I had a PlayStation, so I kind of missed out on the Aki era. So
Mm,
I had like Warzone and then
yeah.
Attitude, which was like all I had. Which to me it was amazing. I know it's people say it sucks now, and I'm like, what? And then I'm like, oh yeah, it does. I'd turnbuckle, pause. What do I do? check
Yes.
the move, like 17
Yes.
button combinations. And then
And
we
like
had SmackDown come out.
yeah, SmackDown games were very good. Those games, even like SmackDown 2 is still pretty. I actually just literally yesterday downloaded a new mod for SmackDown 2 that's it's WWF 92 to 93, and it's so well done. I'm actually kind of toying with the idea, pending the success of this book, about doing a PS1, because while I didn't have a PS1 book, I should say, I didn't have a PS1 during its heyday. I got one after SmackDown had came out, like a used one or something like that. But my best friend did have one. So, like Warzone, for instance, we found out that you could make female created wrestlers if you went through the the story mode of the game with a male created wrestler. So when we found that out, like we had our middle school girlfriends and we're like, oh, we got to do this. So we stayed up all night playing that godforsaken game just to be able to do that. And like it was like the wee hours of the morning, and we were like, was this really worth it? I guess it was. I guess it was. So, I was able to play a lot of those games too, thankfully. But yeah, like just the N64 ones, man. It was just so much more fun, and it was so much more pick up and play, but there were so many more nuances and stuff. And until the SmackDown games, and the SmackDown games are good, but they are definitely more on the arcadey side of things. Whereas, you could actually have like a crazy 5-star Meltzer match in an Aki Engine game. So, but yeah, I definitely appreciate those as well.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting with the Aki engine, like with those games, because there've been so many iterations since then where so many companies have gone, we are going to make the next No Mercy or WrestleMania 2000. I mean, we had it with the TNA game. All I heard before that came out was AJ Styles saying, "This is the same thing as the N64 game. This is what I wanted." And yeah, it didn't really turn out like that. And we kind of had the same sort of thing with Fight Forever. Have you found anything that has come anywhere close, to that N64 experience?
I would say the last thing that had an N64 feeling to it were the Day of Reckoning games on the GameCube. But as far as like modern stuff is concerned, like you could see kind of some of the DNA in definitely not in Impact. Impact was just a crazy game, but it looked really good. Like that game looked way better than the WWE games of that time frame. But yeah, it just didn't play very well. And like Fight Forever, I had hopes of, and I do think the core gameplay is solid in that. And I was hopeful that there was going to be, updates to the creator wrestler, fix some things like, finishers being an automatic, 3 count and stuff like that. But they never did. And it's very disappointing. There's a new game that's scheduled to come out next year called Ultra Pro Wrestling that looks very Aki Engine. The people actually that are creating it understand what that engine is and how that engine works. And they have a pretty good roster. Like they have just like made up wrestlers as like the base, but they're doing lots of additional DLC characters where like 50% of the proceeds actually go to the wrestlers themselves. And they have like quite a litany of different people. I got like Canyon, RVD, Sabu, newer people, Matt Cardona, Demolition and stuff like that. So it's an interesting roster. And I do like what I see from that game, but I do have that one kind of fear that, maybe they're going a bit too big. Because with a lot of the smaller companies that try and make wrestling games, I mean, I'm so old. I remember a game called Pro Wrestling X that was supposed to be the modern Aki Engine game from 20 years ago. And the game is still in development. And it's like, oh man, like you just run into so many roadblocks with stuff like that. So it's like, is there a good enough balance that someone can find? But I do think out of all the more independent games, that Ultra Pro Wrestling definitely has a shot at being that style of game.
Yeah, it does. It definitely feels like obviously the indie space in terms of gaming now. Obviously, just to kind of timestamp this a little bit, we're coming off of a PlayStation State of Play where it's essentially nothing happened. Like I didn't it to the point where I didn't even watch it. I just watched a recap because I was just like nothing happened. Where are the first party games? And it does still feel like we're in a bit of a indie bit of an indie fairyland kind of like there's still some fantastic stuff being produced by people like single party going. I mean, games like Animal Well, one guy
Yeah.
makes this like crazy unreal game. But it does feel sometimes like we haven't had. Why has pro wrestling not got that sort of indie? It feels like up until now with Ultra Pro, we haven't really had any sort of like indie games come out. I mean, there was maybe Legends of Wrestling back in the day, but that was like weird.
I have a
It's
I have a
just
soft spot.
bizarre.
I
It's
have a very
darker.
big soft spot for Showdown Legends of Wrestling,
Oh,
which was
okay.
the unfinished one. But yeah, I mean, there's a couple, like you have Action Arcade Wrestling that came out, which was a action arcade style game
Yeah.
that was pretty good. And you also had Retromania Wrestling, which was kind of a WrestleFest style game that was pretty good. But as far as like bigger scale, like you have the M Dickey games that are pretty fun, just from a chaotic standpoint. But you're not really having great matches with those. So yeah, it's a hard thing to do because wrestling games are kind of contingent on rosters and stuff.
Yeah, no, definitely. Obviously, it's more. I mean, it's funny because it is back in the day. It used to be kind of the big thing was creating your own wrestler. Create a wrestler is still a huge thing for modern games. The downloadable content. People half the time buy these games. I mean, we've just had 2K24 has been announced for PlayStation Plus, and people don't even necessarily buy that for the roster. They buy it because someone's going to make the AEW guys, someone's going to make WCW mats and things like that. So, do you kind of feel like are there any modern wrestling games that you've really like in the last, say, like 10 years or so? I know you mentioned the original ECW guys that came back in the mid 2000s, which scarily is nearly 20 years ago. Um,
Oh, God.
which is just not. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. Have there been any like games in the last, say, decade or so that have really like any of the 2K games or anything like that where you've kind of gone, yeah, you know what, this is pretty good. I can really sink some hours into this.
I initially was a fan of the reboot of the WWE 2K games. When they took that little time frame off after the disaster of WWE 2K20 and kind of refined things. And I really enjoyed WWE 2K24 until everything just got messed up. All of my created wrestlers disappeared, and I was like, "What happened? Where are they?" Like everything I had downloaded completely disappeared. And when I went to start re-downloading stuff, I noticed that there was like this weird bald glitch where not everyone, but like half of the people that I would download were bald. And I was like, wait a second. And I would go and I would look at the little preview of the character, and they had hair. And then all of a sudden, like, no hair in the game. And it was just this weird glitch that still exists now. And it's just like, the problem with the modern WWE games is my factions. As you download my factions, you have the latest card. I don't want to play a card game. I want to play a wrestling game. I will say, I had a lot of people. I did like a tier list video where I rated every wrestling game like ever. And one of the games that I hadn't played before really was WWE 2K14. And a lot of people were like, no, you really need to play that game. And I was like, well, okay. And I played that game. And I've actually been playing that game somewhat recently. And I really enjoy that game. I think the 30 years of WrestleMania mode, I think it's better than the one that's in WWE 2K24 for 40 years. Like they do little cool nuances, like have like the end game character model cut a promo from an event, and it has the audio from the actual wrestler, but the character model is it's not like a video, it's the actual character model of the wrestler themselves doing it. And I think that's really cool. There are some little inconsistencies, like with the ladder match between Shawn Michaels and Razor Ramon at WrestleMania 10. Like the ladder's not in the entryway, so you don't get that cool interaction on the intros of the wrestlers like they had in real life. But for the most part, I actually really enjoy that game. And there's so many different wrestlers you unlock in the game without having to do like, crazy DLC stuff. So I really like that game. I think that's a really good game.
I think that was kind of the last of the perfect period, like you said, with the My Faction thing. It's because of places like EA saying, right, you want to play Ultimate Team? Give us, you spent $70 on a game. You're going to have to spend another $30 to get the season pass. You're going to have to buy this, this, and this. Oh, do you want to play it a week before it comes out? Okay, well, you can do that. And then if you're Ubisoft, you can decide to just delete everyone's saves. Oh, you want to play Star Wars Outlaws? Nah, just nah, nah. You want to play it a week before everyone
thanks,
else?
thanks for the extra money, but we have to delete your save. Sorry, but
Yeah,
they're
it's
going through it right now anyway. So
yeah. I can't come from a similar era as you in terms of video games. I mean, it was the beauty of gaming consoles back then with a gaming PC. You'd turn it on, you'd install the game, you'd have to make sure you had all the right drivers. With a PlayStation or a Nintendo, you put it there, you got the cartridge, you blew in it if you had to, even though it said not to, but everyone did it. And then it
everyone
worked. And that was the game. That there was no downloads, there was nothing. That was the game. And I think it's it's funny how we're now like 30 plus years beyond some of these incredible late 90s games, including the WCW NWO games, which were part of the Aki engine, like you said. But it does feel like gameplay wise we genuinely haven't matched it, which is just wild, because you'd think the companies would just be like jumping on this going like, let's just do this, let's just make this. Is it a licensing thing, do you reckon?
I think it's just an overcomplication thing. I mean, as crazy as that sounds, like, and they just focus so much on, you know, cutting edge graphics and so, like, I get it. You got to keep up with the Joneses and stuff like that, but it almost feels like it goes like my faction is the most important thing because that's where you're going to make residuals and extra money on. Then the graphics, the roster, and somewhere in the middle of the pack is like the gameplay. And it's funny because I'm always like, if somebody can make a table that I can move around and functions like a normal table and put it in like something like No Mercy, I probably wouldn't play the newer SmackDown games or anything like that, because you can always make a wrestler, you can always get an updated roster that a modder has done. And there's actually a brand new literally came out a few days ago where a modder it hasn't perfected it yet, but they've actually made it so where when you go in No Mercy and you grab a weapon out of the crowd, sometimes you'll grab a table, and that table can then be placed anywhere in the ring and you could do moves through it. Now you can't like set people up on top of it quite yet. He's working on that. But like I can't express like how excited I was for that, and being able to do like, playing like a Raven versus Taz match and being Taz and just like Taz plexing Raven through the table, and it works so well. Like the hit detection is incredible on it. So it's like, you know, I almost feel like the older games, and it's, there's probably just a old man talking to a cloud with this as well. But I just feel like some of these older games, because of the customization you can do, like people can essentially create the exact game that you want with it. And it doesn't, when you do when you do it in something like WWE 2K24, like say you create a specific era of WCW or WWF, WWE, ECW or whatever, you can get the look and you can get the atmosphere, but I never really feel like you get necessarily the feel, like where it feels like an actual match from that era. But with the N64 games, you can, I feel. And like wrestling, it evolves and stuff in terms of the move set, but as far as like pacing and stuff is concerned, I feel like that's where the Aki engine games just nail it, because you're not just going out there and doing your biggest and best moves right off the jump. You have to build up to it. You have to weaken, especially on harder difficulties, and you're gonna get reversed, and there's gonna be ebbs and flows and things like the pace of the match itself. And I just feel like they still haven't really captured that quite as well as they did back during those days.
Which is which is crazy. Obviously, with it being like, so many years later. But obviously, as I mentioned, it's the Art of N64 Wrestling Games, the book. Where can you get it? I know you can get it from Amazon, but is there anywhere else?
Yeah, you can get it from Amazon. There is a Kindle version and a paperback version as well. Covers all of the N64 wrestling games from North America and Japan. It also has interviews with several wrestlers, some of which were in the games themselves, and just telling their sort of stories, what it was like to be in the game or whatnot. And it also covers all of the newer mod projects, all the texture projects, how those things came to be, how they use a Game Shark, how they use this new program that allows for a quicker turnaround time. You can also get autographed copies on CastlemaniaGames.com. I did a t-shirt bundle as well. That was a very limited thing. At the time of the filming of this, the only two sizes left are small and medium. So good luck. Hopefully you're a small guy if you want to get one
That
of
happens for
those, because
everything. If you're in a band, if you make any sort of merch, extra large and large have sold before you've even made them. Like it just
you know
happens
what's
for everything.
you know what the best selling, the 2X and the 3X sold out like instantaneously, and I was like, oh man, I got a lot of big boy watchers here. And I don't even know why I did small. I only did 10 small shirts, and I've sold one as of yesterday. Maybe I sold one yesterday, an additional one. So maybe I'm up to two on it. I got to check my report this morning. But there's also autograph. That's an autograph bundle, and you can get an autograph copy from Castlemania Games as well. We are running very close to being out of those, and the autograph copies are fun because I did a live stream where I started signing them. I don't have all of them in yet, but I got a portion of them, and I decided that I'm just going to write like weird random things in there as well. Like we're doing wrestling quotes and all sorts of weird stuff in it. So who knows what that autograph copy will say. But yes, it is available on Amazon as well if you don't care about any of that, and you can get it a lot quicker.
There is that. That is obviously the advantage, but disadvantage of Amazon being the biggest thing in the world. So I was going to ask you in terms of modern wrestling, how often do you get the chance to keep up? I know I saw on X, Twitter, whatever it's called now, you've been watching the Vince McMahon documentary that has just come out on Netflix. Obviously, that's a bit more aimed at the casual people that are maybe turning on Netflix for the first time. But then, what sort of casual person's watching a 6 hour documentary on Vince McMahon, which I don't quite understand. But I was going to ask you some crazy predictions. So
Okay.
let's say between now and the end of 2025, what's your big crazy wrestling prediction? But also, what's your big crazy gaming prediction?
I'll do gaming first because I think that's a little easier for me to say. I think you see a substantial shift in the industry. I think you're already seeing it now, but a lot of people are just kind of blind to it. I think you see more companies, more major companies go under or restructure and retool. I think your game output becomes slower, continues to become slower. I think you see more layoffs. The industry just got too bloated. And, especially during COVID, you had all these people because they were sitting at home. Like this just shows you how stupid a lot of business people are. They thought the COVID sales and the COVID revenue was going to stay around forever. And I'm a one man team over here, and I understood that the COVID year was very good for the channel from a monetary standpoint because people couldn't do anything else. I was one of the, content creators, as much as they get flack for not being, not having a real job. We were the only people who were able to really like work and entertain people because this is what we do. We sit at home and, we make videos. So like I understood this isn't going to be a long-term thing. It's just going to be, a good year. And then, next year you just, you retool, you move on. But these companies couldn't do it. So that's why you're seeing all this sort of turnaround or, turnover with so many studios and games not hitting expectations, and you're at the law of diminishing returns. So I think that this shift, I call it a crash, and people like to make fun of me because obviously, I don't mean that stores aren't going to sell video games, although you are seeing a lot
Yeah,
of
and it's happening over here
retail.
too. It's happening over here. Our
I
version of
mean,
GameStop is not selling physical games anymore. It's coming up. It's happening.
yeah. So I think you just you continually start to see the shift, and I think people are going to push back a bit more than they have before because, a lot of people are just tired of some of the practices within the industry. And, the best way to stop that is to vote with your wallet. As far as my wrestling prediction for the end of 2025, I'm going to say, WWE buys TNA. I
Okay.
think there's,
Yeah.
I think there's a chance of that happening and use that as like a farm system because obviously, they have a lot of programming changes coming up. And I don't know, there's just something, the relationship between WWE and TNA as it stands now, like it's kind of perplexing to me. Like I get Forbidden Door and stuff like that, companies working together, but I almost feel like there's something a bit more to this. And I think we're at the age now where you can't necessarily hide things where like, you had, people legitimately thought when ECW and WWF were kind of working together in a little bit of a way during like the early eras of Raw and stuff like that. Like you could still hide it a bit more, but then it became, obviously as time went on, we learned, oh, Paulie was on the payroll of WWF and stuff like that at the time. So I think you'll end up seeing something like that. And I don't think that's necessarily a good thing. I always like competition. But with D'Amore getting pushed out of TNA and stuff like that, and them, kind of changing things up, I could see that happening.
Yeah, definitely. One final question. Aside from content creation, because obviously I know, as you say, content creation is a legitimate job. People don't seem to realize it is, but you do sit in front of a computer, you do edit, you do loads, you do your own stuff. What games are you playing, or game that are you playing right now for you, not for content reasons? You just go, I'm done. I'm done working. I want to play this.
Mm, what have I been playing recently? Well, I bought the new. I don't think I'm gonna make a. I don't know. I probably will make a video on it. The new Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom game, and I was actually going to play it this morning, but it won't let me access it. I guess it doesn't
Oh.
unlock till noon or something like that, so I don't really get that. But as far as and just enjoyment, I've actually been playing ESPN NFL 2K5 because I like football. I don't love it, but I like it, and American football, that is. And Madden stinks and I don't like it. And Stevie Richards actually hit me up and he was like, "Do you know how to do the modern rosters in NFL 2K5?" And I was like, "No, but I can't imagine it'd be very hard. I'll look into it for you." And so I started looking into it, and then it wasn't necessarily hard. It was just trying to figure out what you had to do with the memory card. And so the more I looked into it, the more annoyed I got with it. And I was like, well, now I just want to figure this out for myself. Like I need to, like, this is bothering me. I need to finalize this. So I ended up figuring it out. And then I was like, well, I need to test it out, of course. And I started playing it and I was like, wow, this is still a lot of fun. This feels better than the Madden game. So now I have like a franchise mode with the Giants going on and like, yeah, so I've been playing that because I think it's just it's better than the Madden games are, even though it's 20 years old. Like there are still the game, just much like wrestling games. There's that flow to it, and you feel that flow in in NFL 2K5, which was of course the last 2K football game. So yeah, I've been playing that a bunch, and I've been playing it on the ROG Ally, so I can play it in handheld mode while I'm on the couch watching the amazing quote unquote Vince McMahon documentary.
Yeah, so I mean, another thing we can blame Stevie Richards for, add it to the list of things. Right, right the censor, Blue World Order, loads of stuff. So yeah, obviously, guys, make sure you go out and buy The Art of N64 Wrestling Games. It's a fantastic book. Thank you so much, Shawn, for your time. Really do appreciate it. And yeah, there we go.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.